Sakawire. Hi and welcome back. My name is Teresa and I would like to share with you something about Malmö, Sweden. So as I shared in my last video, towards the end of last year, I managed to visit Malmö, Sweden for the last time. That was not my first time in Sweden, but it was my first time in Malmö. And of course it was a crazy period because it was at the peak of COVID-19. So traveling at that time, of course, I just did it because it was for work. But normally when I travel for work, I try to also put in a bit of some personal time or some time to be able to see around and to appreciate the city that I'm going to, particularly if it's the first time that I'm going to that city. So for Malmö, that was my first time to get there, and it was during the winter season. So of course, traveling during the winter is a bit more complex for us who come from a very sunny environment. So I didn't really plan a lot of sightseeing or touring, and then at the same time, because of the complexities with getting COVID testing, we were not sure where I would get a COVID test in Malmö. So I had already gotten my test from the transit city in Harare, so that I would be able to get back home within the 96 hours that is required. So I had very little time to see around, but some of the places that were recommended for me to see, I'll just take you through some of them so that you get some tips on places that you could visit in case in the future you plan to go to Malmö. So first, just to highlight that Malmö is a very, in my view, it was a very small city. In fact, it reminds me of my hometown and very easy to navigate. I stayed at the Best Western Royal, and I must say that there are a number of Best Western establishments in the city, so you'd have to be very specific to the cab driver, and you can imagine I was going to the hotel in the night, and we ended up at the wrong Best Western. So I think it's always good practice that you whenever you're going to a city for the first time, that you tell the driver to wait a few minutes and you get in and confirm. So that's what I did. I went in, then I was told no, this is the sister hotel. So I just took my baggage back into the taxi, and then we went around to my hotel. And normally I try to book hotels that are very close to the touristy areas, because it really saves you the trouble of finding transport to go see some of the key sites. So for this time I was staying near the famous square. It's called the Little Square, and it's really a nice setting. It's just like most other European cities, and having a square with a lot of restaurants around that you could sit out. And I imagine that during the summer it would really be very nice to sit there and have your cup of coffee. But unfortunately, because it was winter and with the COVID, a lot of the restaurants were not open, so the square was a little bit dull, but it was good to appreciate. The other sites in Malmö that you could visit, there's a lot. What I would have loved to do is a walking tour, because they have a lot of walking tours. But unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of the tours were closed, and it was not certain when they would be open. So I wasn't able to get any tour that was available during the days that I was there. So I just decided to do the sightseeing on my own with the recommendation from the hotel. managed to see the St. Peter's Church, which is really a 14th century Gothic establishment, and really a nice place to see. I love historical buildings and churches and appreciating those, so that was a nice place to visit and very easy to access from the center. Then the other things also that you could do in Malmo from my research, because I wasn't able to do much, they have this twisted building. So it's like an iconic building in the Scandinavian region. It's one of the highest building, and it's built in like a torso. So that would be nice to also see. The other thing is because it's very close to the water. So if you like cruises, you could do different kinds of boat cruises. I particularly love doing cruises whenever I go to a city that has some water nearby. But because it was winter and with the cold, I was really reluctant to do that. The other thing that you could see in Malmo is the famous Öresund Bridge. So this is a bridge that actually goes over the water and connects the two cities, so Malmo and Copenhagen in Denmark. So that's really something very iconic that I would have loved to do, but because again I was trying to get an established tour company to be able to book because of the risk of cancellation and all that, and I wasn't able to get any tours that were happening across the bridge, so I didn't get to do that, and the time was also very short. I was quite worried about in case of anything, in case of any delay, and I end up missing my flight, of course. That's really scary, because you don't want to, I didn't want to deal with my COVID test not being valid for returning home and then being put into mandatory quarantine. Then the other things that some people recommended were, of course, the classical museums. There's a Malmo Castle. If you're interested in castles, and you could also visit nearby cities like Lund, where I think from my research the best thing that would have been attractive would have been to visit the university, but during this trip, being that it was so short, that was not an option at that time. But generally for shopping, even despite the COVID, at least some of the shopping centers were open with a lot of the you know, like the high fashion. So what I liked about Malmo as a town is that if you want to know the shopping streets, they've marked them very well. So there's a pink line, there's a pink path along the streets that actually lead you to the shopping zone of the city, which I really liked. So basically you cannot get lost, and you're able to go shopping. And now during this COVID, of course, I was quite hesitant about the shopping, and being that this was the streets of Sweden, and they don't have a masking policy, so masks are not mandatory. People are just walking around. So I didn't want to do a lot of shopping, but I managed to go to a few shops. And the only problem with that is that, of course, I wasn't able to like try on things, because I was afraid of, you know, the congestion and people not wearing masks and that kind of thing. But at least the shops are still very much open. You're still able to get things from the shopping streets. So that was something good to be able to do. From the airport, I think the journey is about 20-30 minutes, and you're at the airport. The airport was quite deserted. We were like 2 people at the airport for about 30 minutes. You'd think that you're completely lost. But that's the kind of scenario right now. The airport is quite deserted. I think our flight was the only one that was operating that evening. And finally I was able to go back to Stockholm. And again, Stockholm was quite deserted. I think the flight that I was taking was the one that was a big flight. So at least later in the night is when you were able to see people, but otherwise most of the streets were quite deserted. So basically that's Malmo in a nutshell. I am in Stockholm, Arlanda Airport, Sweden. As you can see, the corridor is completely empty. I am the only one walking on this corridor, trying to cross to the other side to my gate to catch my flight to Nairobi. It's quite eerie, so deserted. I even feel a little bit afraid. The cafes and everything are being opened only at intervals. Crazy times. Relax. And of course there's always that nice sleek car, the Volvo. I took coffee here an hour ago and now it's closed, but the duty free is open. Yep, Arlanda Airport. Feel free to comment and to give feedback on this video, and if you have any questions, any comments, I'll be happy to receive them. And like the channel, and see you next time.